Welcome to the Doggy Dutch audio stories, where oracle card readings open into reflections on manifestation, systems, sovereignty, and everyday life. Brought to you by the Etsy shop Alchemy of Me, the Thesis of Us social justice framework, and the Walking the Universe ecosystem for manifestation. Episode 18. Have you ever felt like money was a partner that kept leaving? This episode is for moments like those. The story for today is titled, A Cup of Awareness.
Dutch has been reflecting on his social justice and manifestation oracle card pull. A reading drawn using the Thesis of Us cards from the book Human Not Machine by Dr. Siobhan Ballasing-Williams, available from Amazon and Barnes & Noble.
And also drawn using the A Metaphor for Life cards from the book Walking the Universe, also by Dr. Siobhan Ballasing-Williams, and available to download and print from the Etsy shop Alchemy of Me.
The cards that came forward were Reclaim the Abundance, Remove Socialization, Rekindle Openness, and Rekindle Wonder. Dutch is letting the reading sit beside him, carrying the cards quietly and noticing what reveals itself. It is morning. Dutch is at his desk, paying bills, and drinking tea made from lavender he grew in his garden. In the background, the affirmation video titled Money Affirmations for Rewriting Scarcity, Lack and Limitation from the Alchemy of Me YouTube channel is playing. Although he is not consciously listening, one of the lines catches his attention.
Money, I call you my partner because you are woven into the rhythm of my life.
That line gets him contemplating. First, about the concept of him and money being in a life partnership, sort of like a marriage. And second, about the attributes of that relationship.
Dutch realizes the concept itself, that he can be in a relationship with, or have a bond with something like money, had not occurred to him before. He has not previously thought of money as a friend or a lifelong partner, which means he had not considered the quality of that relationship either. And as he reflects, he finds that he and money do not have the healthiest of bonds.
Dutch realizes that to him money feels like a partner that leaves. And he sees how his relationship with money has not only been forged from the wound of absence, but also how his relationship with money is still being shaped by absence even today.
Dutch finds himself thinking about what created and continues to create money's absence.
His mind goes to the system. How the system makes money scarce and untrustworthy. He thinks about how the system deliberately makes the availability of money insufficient.
Dutch contemplates how the system not only produces scarcity, it sets up the conditions to maintain it.
Which is why, for many, there exists a gap between what they earn and what surviving costs.
A deficit wide enough that money leaving was and is more certain than money arriving.
Dutch thinks about what happens in any relationship when attention goes only to what is missing, to what has not shown up, to what leaves.
He thinks about how that kind of attention, singular, fixed, organized entirely around absence, can make any relationship feel fractured, unsafe, like the ground beneath the relationship is not solid.
And for Dutch, this is exactly what his relationship with money has felt like. It has felt unreliable. Like quicksand.
Dutch sees how his relationship with money has been and continues to be built from inside scarcity that has been system created and maintained.
He sees how his relationship with money is not just shaped by scarcity, but also founded upon and constructed from it.
Dutch looks down at the cup in his hands, and he sees the partially drunk tea. Some of it gone, some of it there. And he thinks about his awareness. About where the system has trained it to go, about what the system has trained it to register.
Dutch thinks about how he has been trained to focus on what his cup is missing, to see deficit more so than anything else. And he thinks about what has never been poured into his awareness, things like the resources available to him.
Dutch thinks about how he does not register those resources in the same way he does money's absence, because the system has trained his attention towards scarcity, training him to look at the deficit and ignore all else.
So now Dutch wonders what it would take to build a different relationship with money. Not the one the system organized. Not the one constructed from absence, but something different, something more authentic.
Dutch thinks about gratitude. He remembers the songs he heard as a child, count your blessings, name them one by one, which makes him reflect on the idioms about silver linings and the instruction to be thankful.
Dutch was taught to be grateful, and he finds himself wondering if gratitude might offer a different way into his relationship with money.
He thinks about what that would look like. Being grateful for money, counting the ways money has shown up. He can see how that might help. How noticing what has shown up might begin to widen the relationship he has with money, how it could help to include not just what left but what also arrived. He can see how it might make the relationship feel less like pure absence and more like something with two sides.
And yet, something underneath, something about gratitude, gives him pause.
For Dutch, the way he was taught gratitude, which is to count what has shown up, means accepting what has been given as though it simply arrived, without acknowledging that what arrived and what did not was shaped by forces beyond individual choice.
To practice gratitude the way he was instructed and taught, Dutch would have to ignore that the distribution of resources, money, etc. was not neutral. It would mean ignoring that there was power involved in relationship, ignoring what that power looked like, and ignoring how that power functioned.
For Dutch, focusing on gratitude without asking questions about distribution or investigating power means the rationing stays unexamined.
And the system's role in deciding what arrived and what did not stays invisible. Dutch thinks that a relationship built on not asking questions, important questions that interrogate what is underlying, is not an authentic one.
Dutch wonders how, or even if, gratitude could help him feel differently about money if it could not help him understand the relationship itself.
Over time, Dutch has come to realize that authentic relationships require more than warmth. They require addressing the conditions shaping the relationship, and those remain outside the frame of gratitude and what it offers.
Authentic, healed, healthy relationships require examination, honesty, and awareness, or the relationship's underlying conditions never gets traced back to their source.
And a relationship where the source of its brokenness is not known or addressed is a house of cards.
An unexamined relationship cannot repair itself, because repair requires seeing what produced the damage in the first place. And without examination, the wound is never addressed, and the problem stays in place.
Dutch thinks about finding the silver lining in the tight season. He can see how that sounds like something that could possibly help his relationship with money. How believing that something good can come from something hard might give the difficulty a purpose, how it might give the gap a reason for being there.
Dutch thinks about how finding the silver lining means framing the difficulty as a pathway to something better.
Which reminds him of an idiom he has often heard.
What does not break you makes you stronger.
What that saying and its silver lining does is twofold. First, it creates a distraction and deflects from the system. Secondly, it repackages the difficulty that the system produces as something that builds a person and strengthens them. Which troubles Dutch for several reasons.
First, the conditions producing the tight season remain unexamined. The system's role in creating and sustaining the gap stays invisible. So, the source of the difficulty disappears, and instead there is a lesson extracted from it for the person. A lesson that makes the person, not the system, the accountable party.
And secondly, Dutch is troubled that the silver lining is asking those experiencing the gap to be grateful for the lesson, be grateful for the growth, to feel thankful toward the system that is responsible for producing the gap.
It is asking those experiencing difficulty to generate warmth toward a system that deliberately created and organized scarcity, and then handed back some of what it had taken. And the person is asked to experience that as receiving, rather than as recovering what should never have been taken in the first place. To Dutch, such framing is not just distortion. It seems both harmful and manipulative.
Dutch realizes he is not looking for a way to make the difficulty meaningful. He is looking for a way to more completely understand the relationship he has with money, the gap and deficit.
So, Dutch turns to manifestation next. Manifestation teachings instruct Dutch to relate to money from his future abundant self. The one with no lack, the one already flowing, to see himself already in possession of what he desires, to feel the feeling of having it already.
But that asks Dutch to build his relationship with money from a place he has not yet arrived at. To relate to money, not from where he is, but from where he wants to be.
Dutch thinks about how relationships actually work. Connection is not built by pretending the relationship is something it is not. Bonds are not formed by imagining a different version of what is there. Relationships are built from presence with what is actually there, from facing it, working through it.
And because relationships are built from presence with what is actually there, a nervous system cannot build genuine connection from fantasy. In asking Dutch to bypass his present reality, manifestation teachings do what gratitude did. It makes the system disappear from view as the gap becomes a frequency problem. And the system gets to continue doing harm while its structures and conditions stay invisible.
Dutch thinks about how this lands on communities that have been specifically targeted by the system. Communities that have experienced slavery, colonization, segregation, wage suppression, displacement, and discrimination. He thinks about what it means to tell those communities to count their blessings, to find the silver lining, to be grateful for what remained after the system had taken what it took.
He thinks about how telling targeted communities to vibrate higher and align with prosperity goes beyond making the system's harm invisible. How it is asking people to perform thankfulness for the very conditions organized against them, while at the same time the system continues to actively organize against them.
Not only is that asking people to bypass a reality that is still being produced, it is asking those communities to participate in their own erasure. Dutch sits with that, horrified.
Neither gratitude, nor silver linings, nor manifestation has offered Dutch what he is actually looking for. Each seemed to offer a way to feel differently about the relationship he had with money, but none helped him see the relationship more clearly.
And what Dutch wants is not a fantasy relationship with money, nor a disconnected one. He wants an authentic one.
He thinks about what appreciation actually is. Appreciation is not gratitude, which papers over the problems in the relationship and asks him to perform thankfulness rather than examine what was actually there. And appreciation is not manifestation, which asks him to bypass the relationship as it actually is and to come from a place he had not yet arrived at.
As Dutch understands it, appreciation is something different. Appreciation does not ask Dutch to look away from the gap. It does not ask him to perform warmth toward the relationship or pretend it is something it is not. It does not ask him to bypass his present reality.
Appreciation asks Dutch to see, which requires awareness. 'Cause you cannot appreciate what you cannot see. So to Dutch, appreciation feels different from gratitude and manifestation dogma, because appreciation asks him to be aware and to be present with all that is there.
Dutch has only ever been trained to see one side of his relationship with money, the deficit, the absence, the gap. The system trained his awareness toward scarcity, toward what was missing, toward what had left, toward what had not arrived, which is one side of the relationship. And for most of his life, it has been the side receiving nearly all of his attention.
Not because it was the only side that existed, but because it was the side the system taught him to monitor, so his awareness kept returning to it. Returning to money being spent, leaving, running short, not arriving, and not being enough. And over time, that became all that Dutch's relationship with money was.
Dutch knows relationships have many sides. They are multifaceted as well as complex. He is aware that relationships are formed through attention, and that whatever receives attention becomes what the relationship is organized around. If attention goes only to absence, the relationship becomes organized around absence and nothing else. If attention goes only to deficit, the relationship becomes organized around deficit and other facets are ignored. If awareness keeps returning only to what is missing, then what is missing begins to feel like the entirety of the relationship.
Appreciation changes that. Not by removing the deficit, not by denying the gap, not by pretending the relationship is healthier than it is. It does that simply because it widens awareness.
Appreciation gives attention to what is present, to everything, which means giving the same quality of attention that absence has always received to everything else.
Which means attending to the gap, but also to the resources. Seeing both. Holding both. Acknowledging both.
Seeing not only where money left, but where money arrived. Not only seeing what is missing, but also seeing what is present. Seeing and being present with both the deficit, and also with the resources that exist alongside it.
Being present with the paycheck that arrived, as well as the bill that was paid. Gratitude asked Dutch to be thankful for what arrived. Manifestation asked Dutch to imagine the gap gone. But as he understands it, appreciation asks him to see the relationship as it is.
With appreciation, the gap remains visible. The system remains visible. The deficit remains visible.
Dutch realizes that appreciation does not make money stay. Nor does it close the gap. Appreciation does not undo what the system has done. But what it does do is change the relationship of awareness and attention.
When absence was the only thing receiving attention, money felt like a partner that always left. A partner that could not be trusted. A partner that could not be depended upon.
But appreciation can help Dutch see all of his partnership with money. Appreciation can hold what is left and what has arrived. It can hold the deficit and the resources because appreciation is grounded in awareness and presence.
And when there is presence and awareness in his relationship with money, then money no longer appears as departure alone. The relationship becomes larger than the leaving. Still imperfect. Still affected by the system. But no longer defined exclusively by departure.
And that is the relationship Dutch has been looking for. Not a perfect one, but a real one. One that is no longer organized entirely around absence, but that is also not organized around an illusion.
Not only does appreciation make that possible, appreciation supports his nervous system, not by asking it to override the deficit or bypass what is hard, but by widening what it registers, giving it room to hold both the deficit and what is also present at the same time. Not instead of the gap, alongside it.
And Dutch knows this is how relationships actually grow. Not by imagining them into something else. Not by performing warmth toward them. Not by pretending they are better than they are. But by being present with what is actually there. Pouring attention toward all of it. The deficit and the resources. The absence and what has shown up. Together.
As Dutch contemplates, the oracle cards from the week sit with him, reclaiming abundance, inspiring him to see not just the gap, but what is also present alongside it, the resources that are there, what has shown up, both in his awareness at the same time.
Removing socialization, calling him to see how his awareness was trained primarily toward deficit, by the system, by gratitude teachings that kept the system invisible, and by manifestation teachings that asked him to bypass what was actually there.
Rekindling openness, opening him to appreciation as a different way into his relationship with money. Not a relationship that paints the system as benevolent, or one that looks toward a future self he has not become. Rekindling openness with him looking across, at the relationship as it actually is.
Rekindling wonder, inviting him to wonder what an authentic relationship with money might feel like. Built not from performance or fantasy, but from presence with what is actually there.
The end. If something in this met you, take a breath with Dutch and let it simmer for a moment. Let's breathe in. 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold together. 4, 3, 2, 1. And now we exhale. 4, 3, 2, 1. Thanks for listening. Until next time, keep noticing what reveals itself along the way. And remember, if you want your own readings, the Thesis of Us Oracle cards and the Metaphor for Life Manifestation cards are available at Alchemy of Me on Etsy.